Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. Today, we will be talking about how to optimize your data storage. If you don't know me, my name is Marcelo. I am TagoIO content editor, and with me today, we have Victor Lima, one of our lead developers. Right, so before we jump through our, our content, I would like to remind you all that this webinar is being recorded. So if you have missed any part of it, relax, it will be uploaded on YouTube. So if you want to watch it, feel free to it. And our chat is now open. So please say hi there. And if you have any questions, we have just also opened our Q&A that is located above the chat. So you can ask all your questions there. After the presentation, we will answer all the questions, right? So, just for you to know our agenda, first we'll see how to apply the metadata, then how to create formulas and use them, automate data retention, filter variables through custom parser, and finally, how to use files, right? So, without further ado, please, Vitor.
Hello, everyone. I'm Victor here, and I work in TagoIO as a application manager, and I have been working 7 years. In this webinar, we want to talk a little bit about how to optimize your data. So, just a quick brief here on the data storage concept to make sure everyone understands what we will be talking about. So here I have a diagram that describes all the steps your data takes in order to up to the moment it is stored in your bucket. So first thing we have here are smart things, which is our devices on the field, which are connected to a network server, and that is MQTT, HTTPS, LoRaWAN, Sigfox in this case. But this is any protocol or network server that your device is connected to. And once your device sends data to the network server, it goes to Tago. And for Tago, on each network, we have a payload parser, which is a decoder for that specific protocol or network. And once this decoder is resolved on TagoIO side, your data goes to the connector, which also has its specific decoder. And usually, this specific connector decoder is just looking to the payload information, if that's the case. Of course, you can have a connector without a decoder at all. Most of times, you will see a custom connector under the network, which means that specific connector will not try to parse or decode any of the data that is being sent to your device. And once this decoder is resolved, then your data goes to your device's payload parser, which also has a decoding function. But as payload parser is a very big feature in what you can do with your data. At this step, usually what we want to do using the payload parser is actually removing variable, optimizing the data that will be stored. And up to now, none of the input of this data had been uh, calculated for your usage statistics, which means if you received, let's say, 100 data to your devices, up to now in the devices payload parser, we didn't calculate or make use of your usage data input at all, which means at this point you are able to remove variables. So let's say you received 100 data, you can, using Payload Parser, ignore, let's say, 50 of this data and only store the remaining data to your device, and you will only be charged the data that is stored after the decoder of your device payload is applied. So with the result of the device payload parser, then the data is actually stored on the buckets. So temperature, humidity, geolocation, or any other kind of variable that you have. So this is just a reminder of how this operation works. And so let's dive in what you can do in order to optimize data usage, data inputs, and even data output of your devices. Okay, so we have here an example of metadata in your data, and the metadata is just a parameter inside any of the data that you store on TagoIO. And there are several ways you can make use of the metadata. You can store your sensor information, you can store related information about this data. So, for example, you can send a data like temperature log if you are storing logs and have all the metadata, let's say the message, the user, the device ID, gateway ID. You can have all this information under the metadata. One thing about this parameter is that you are not able to filter using the API. Uh, What do I mean by that? So if you are using the API or even the widgets, you are able to filter out any data by variable, value, group, and even time. But the metadata is not filterable, which means you cannot make a query to the API or to your device, try to find a data that has user inside the metadata. So you would not never be able to filter out this information. If you if you come to a situation where you need to do this, you will need to get all the data for that specific variable and check manually or even automatically to analysis or something else each data to see what's inside the metadata. So this is something you need to keep in mind when using this, but it does allow you to optimize data storage for all your applications if you make a good usage of this parameter. So once you find the data that you want to store in the metadata, you come to the point where you ask yourself, how do I display this information on my dashboards, etc. So TagoIO do have functionality under all the widgets called formula and units. And what it does is that the formula allows you to have some arithmetic and calculations done on top of your variable, but it also allow you to access any any other parameter of your data. So let's say you want to show the variable or the group or the time. You are able to do this using the formula, and of course, you can access metadata and any of the parameters inside your metadata. As you can see here in this screenshot on the right. Um, another big topic when we talk about uh, optimizing your data is having data retention under your devices. So, as you may know at this point, the immutable buckets do have data retention, and this is a required field for all the immutables. You can have their rotation by daily, weekly, monthly, and you have up to 32 retention days or retention months, which is how long your data will be stored. But something that I already saw some people asking about is how do you have retention under a mutable device? So you are able to replicate this behavior by creating your own analysis. So analysis have a lot of power when it comes to accessing data that you have stored, deleting data, or manipulating this data at all. So going to analysis, you can have custom data retention. You can even have more retention for immutable devices where you can delete specific periods if you want to, but you can access mutable devices, delete data that you don't want to be stored anymore, and you can have this automatized using analysis. And as you can see here, we have a snippet. So if you go right now to your analysis, create a new one, you should see a custom data rotation analysis where you can have a starting code, see an example how you can do this, and of course you need to create an action to run this analysis from time to time. Okay, so we did speak on the beginning about Payload Parser, and here is a good example. So if you go right now to your device under the Payload Parser function and just enable the functionality, you will see a starting code for ignoring specific variables. So this is a quick JavaScript code. So you can just enable this and edit this array that is displayed in the image here. And you can add any variable that you don't want to be stored on your device. And the payload parser will be applied when you first receive the data and remove the variables before any of your usage limits are consumed. And of course, you can move this to a connector or a network if you have uh, access to the network and you created the network under your account. Same thing goes to connector. And in some cases, you can also uh, automatize the payload parser for each device. If you do have control over your of how device is created in your account, which means you have an analysis performing this action for you. TagoIO allows you to upload the payload parse automatically using TagoIO SDK or the API. So I want to give you a bit of demonstration. So I'll start sharing my screen here. Okay, hope you all can see my screen. So I have um, my account here, and one of the things I want to show is how to have this payload parser working. So I just have a device here, which is using a storage network and a database connector, which means I can just send any data I want to. So I go to emulator, I have temperature, I can send my data, see that one data had been added here. Let's see, get this carry sample payload, send. Um, Actually, it's giving an error here because group needs to be a string. So let's fix that real quickly. In the payload, and we have six data being added. Let's just enable my live inspector here so we can have a clear understanding of what's happening. Okay, so my live inspector won't connect. Let me try again. Yes, so for some reason this device did not connect the live inspector. But let's enable my payload parser here. So just by enabling this feature, I have this starting code. So it says what this code do, how we can do some testing, and here is the two lines that actually matter for us. Um, is this array with some variables that we have here to ignore, and the code that is actually uh, reapplying this payload data variable, reassigning with a new payload variable filtered by this array. So it checks each array and each of our data in the payload to see if the variable do not exist in this array. So I can do the same thing if I only want to accept the data that is inside this array. I can just remove our exclamation point here, and instead of ignoring these variables, is actually only accepting these variables. So this is just an example. So let's save this and see what happens. If I go to the emulator and send the same data, 6 data accepted. So let's ignore the break variable here, ignore the year and the fuel. It should be doing that. Now, if I do send my data, I actually have 3 data added that instead, and all the final ones here had been ignored from my payload parser. Oh, and here on our live inspector, you can see the result that we did before, where I included all these variables, and the new result, which only includes the location, RPM, and speed. If you take full attention here, you'll see that on our live inspector, we can actually see all the steps our data took before data had been accepted. So raw payload means the original payload that we received, and the result here for our device payload parser is how our payloads looks like at this point after the payload parser had been applied. So talking a little bit about optimization with the metadata, you can come back here and for example, we can identify that we don't actually need this information to be stored in different variables. So let's say for my application, uh, I don't plan to be getting gear and brake into specific carries. Let's say I just know that I'll be getting speed every time that I want to see RPM or gear or brake. So one thing that we can do here for optimization is to use our metadata. As I mentioned that before, we are not able to filter out any information inside the metadata. We can just display every time you get speed. So for example, we can have brake inside here, value of false. We can have here, value of true. Also get our RPM, same value. Then let's say that's all that is important for us. So we use after that all this information under the metadata, which means anything inside here will not be charged from our account. Speed is just one data input and will be just one data output. And every time you get speed, we also will get the brake information here and the RPM information. And if you want to optimize even more, we can also have the geo location information in the speed data. So this allows us to plot this information in map widgets as well. So let's do that. Of course, we do lost the value here, but let's say this value is important. We can also have it here. Of course, we can create any parameter here that we want, as long as it's a string, and we can put car here. Okay, so if we send this data now, we have only one data being added because our payload parser is actually ignoring few. And if I move now to our buckets, I can open here, go to variables. I have my speed. Let's just check if I did not remove that information here. Let's disable this for a minute. Send the payload to data and refresh this page. Yeah, for some reason our metadata is not being stored, or this is not displaying. Okay, got it. So I do. No, I don't have any time here, right? Yeah, now we get it. So we can see from the screen that we have the metadata store for speed. So when I hover here, I can see we have break, year, RPM, and location value. So our variable also has the location and of course our own value for speed. So when it comes to displaying this information, let me create a dashboard here. It can be a normal dashboard. And here we'll be creating widgets where I can display the behavior of the metadata. So one of them would be dynamic table. I believe this is a very common one when we want to display data. And we can find uh, the device I had been working with. And here what we can do is to get our speed variable. Then we go to formula and we can enable the formula. And if you just scroll a little bit, we can have an example here how to access the metadata information. Let me go back to the bucket real quickly so we can take a look again of what we have for speed. So we have break, gear, RPM. So for example, here I can access the break variable or the break metadata. Now for a new column, we can just have the same device and the same variable, speed, but this time we enable formula and we can get the year instead. And of course, it's very important here to get some clarification for the column header. Now we can just access same variable, get the speed. And this one we are will be getting the actual value for speed, and I think that's good for us. So here It's also displaying the unit, so we want to get rid of this unit, and we can disable the unit by changing the fixed unit here. Now we have our data. Okay, so one important thing here when using the emulator is to not have this group or have different group every time you send data. Otherwise, it will just, for the dynamic table behavior, it just replace the existing data, the existing row we have. So by having different groups, we can make sure we are creating new rows. So this is an example for accessing the data on the accessing the metadata on the dynamic table. And this same behavior can apply for both of the widgets. So let's say you have a map here. I can also access our device, get the speed, can add the new data, some information, and get the speed again. But now for this widget, I will have this. Oh, we don't have an example of the data here if you want to take a better look. But in this case, we have this uh, icon on top of each device where we can add the additional settings on top of this data. And here we can access the formula and the unit, enable it, and get our metadata, get the year information, for example, and have an alias called year. So we can get back. So the speed would be just our speed value. So if I have the map now, I click on the top of the pin. Now I can have the year and the speed information. And since I did add the geolocation information to the speed variable, it also can be displayed on the map as well. So one thing to be uh, very aware of these features is that you cannot actually edit. So if you plan to have this edit option for a field with metadata, and I will just enable here for you to take a quick look. You are not actually able to edit metadata inside of your data. So when I press here the edit button, you can see that it actually show up the speed information. So every time you plan to edit this data, you will be actually editing the value field and not the metadata field. So keep this in mind as you are not able to have this edit features on a dynamic table and some other widgets if you are using formula with metadata. When applying formula, you will always be editing the value parameter. So I did talk a little bit about metadata and the payload parser. So next one would be a bit about data retention. So if I go back to my device here and go to my buckets, so this is an immutable device, by the way. So it means we do have data retention enabled. This is required for any immutable device. And one of the things we have here for data optimization on the immutable device is your ability to manage the chunk management. This is also something you can automatize using analysis. If you are good with code, you have the SDK functionalities for chunks all exposed on the SDK from TagoIO, so you are able to export, delete, etc. And one of the things we can do here is to export our chunks. So we can have a specific year here. export our chunks, and then delete these chunks. So this gives you a manual control of your data, and you can do some manual optimizations. But if, for example, you want to have an analysis that loops through all your devices and, let's say, delete all data for 2022, you are able to do that. So one of the things about analysis is that we are actually able to have our some behavior of data retention under your analysis, and we can achieve that with this analysis called custom data retention. So what this code does is that it uses your account token, so you need to get a token from your profile under the token management of your profile, and probably you need to create a permanent variable here, account token, and get your profile token here on the value. And what it will actually do is it will loop through a list of your devices, and for each device, you try to remove the variables that you choose. So this is something that you can do if you have some variables on a lot of devices, and of course, you don't want to go to manually go to 100, 200 devices removing variables. You can have an analysis that do that for you. So you can look at this code. You can see here we check for the account token that you need to be on your environment variable. And then here is how we can get all your devices for this analysis. So have a filter with some page fields. So the only field that matters is the ID. But let's say you also want to get the name. So you can have some logging here for the name of the device. And you have the filter. So filter here is empty, which means you get all the devices. But for example, we can filter by tags. So if you have a specific tag on all your devices, you can just filter by the tag key and the tag value. You can filter by name. You can filter by buckets. So there is a lot of filtering options that you can have here. I believe if you do check the list and the filter here, you can see would be better if you go to the yeah you don't have the option to access from here, but would be better if you go to the SDK documentation on outlet. You can filter because you can actually filter by network, connector, name, created time. There is a lot of different filters you can do. So here this is a very slow loop. So if you do have let's say 1,000, 1 million devices, something like that. Of course, you want to optimize this loop here to have a queue or something. But if you only have 100, 200, something very small like that, you can this loop will do very good for you. So it gets the token of your device. So here the variables that we want to remove, how many register we want to remove for these variables. I'll have a end date. So let's say you just want to remove data from the last month and not from this month. So we have a very really quick code here using DJS where we subtract 1 month from today and transform to a ISO string. And then you run the await device, delete data, and delete all the data from your device. So keep in mind this only works for mutable buckets because the mutable buckets do not allow you to use the delete data or edit data endpoints. And if you want to delete data from An immutable bucket, you need to use the chunk management in order to do that. But for mutable buckets, you are able to have a code like this one. And if we can have, if we want this to be more automatically, you can go for your actions, create an action here of type schedule. Here, run custom data retention. And we can have a schedule to run our analysis, data retention here. And let's say I want to run this each 10 minutes, or for example, we can say we only want to run this on Saturday and Mondays at 12 a.m. So this is another way to have data representation and manage data that is stored on your device. Okay, I hope this webinar helped you get more understanding on what you can do, how can you optimize your application, and when we have devices that is sending a lot of data, the data each 1 minute, 10 minutes, all these tips I gave you will surely help to manage your resource limits in the best way possible. Okay, so Marcelo.
Okay, thank you very much, Victor. It was amazing to see the option that you have, right, to organize your data and use it. We have already some questions, but before we go to them, I would like to remind you all that we're constantly having webinars, basically every month, right? So you can check them out on our events page, and you can also sign up our newsletter, and there we'll tell you every time that we have a new webinar. Right. So here, Victor, the first question is about using metadata formula in line chart widget. Today, is there a limitation to use only one variable if you want to use two metadata parameters from one variable? You don't get it. Is there any plans to fix this?
Okay, so this is not actually a bug. Uh, this behavior with metadata is a new thing that comes in the past year. So a lot of widgets already have the support, but I do believe the charts are the ones that did not get all the support yet. But we do plan to have the support on the chart widget as well, so keep that in mind. I'm just not sure when we will be releasing this, but it is about to come soon.
Okay, that's amazing. Another question in the chat is it possible, for example, to ignore better level every 99 times and take it only the 10th, the 100th time? So you ignore a variable many times, but one time you want to have it.
Okay, so Payload Parser is actually JavaScript code. So, and you actually have some package there that you can use, like DJS, Luxon. You can check. I can check the list here if you want me to talk a little bit about the package. But you do have all these libraries inside the payload parser. So I'm not sure from your question what exactly you want to do by one time. It can be, let's say, at Monday, I want to store speed information that I ignore on the other days. So, for example, you can use the JS library to check if the current date is Monday, and then you accept the speed information. So this is just example. Payload parser is a JavaScript code. What you have there is just an example of in 2 lines how you can ignore the data, but you can have more complex information under the payload parser of how you want to ignore and have all your logic built for your application.
Okay, just a quick update. It's temperature sensor. I need this history of temperature, but not history of the battery.
What was the question? Sorry.
I will just copy it for you, but it explaining how to use it. So, if I get it correctly, he wants to check the history of his temperature, but not of the battery.
Yes, so it makes real sense. So I'm not sure if you want to start the battery or not, but of course you can just ignore battery at all if you don't want its information, or you can add the battery to the metadata. So in this case, you have the battery information for each temperature, and you can access the battery by just getting temperature and accessing the metadata of the temperature. That way, you will have you end up with some history because you have the history of battery for all your temperatures, but you will not be spending data register or input limits on storing this battery information.
Okay, I believe this works for what he's saying. So he will have the battery level, right? So he can use it for an alarm, but he will not store them, correct?
Exactly.
Not store it.
It will be stored. It just it will not matter for usage information of his profile. He not be charged for it.
Okay. Thank you, Vitor. So, guys, if you don't have any other question, I would like to thank you all for participating in this webinar. Have an amazing week, and we see each other on the next webinar. Bye.